But what really rattled me was when I tried to dig deeper into Harrison Black. No matter what I searched, nothing came up. It was like he'd been wiped from the web. The only thing I could find was an archived article. Sophie had sent me one that took forever to load, as if someone was watching me access it. The headline hit me like a punch. Housing official exposes largest HOA fraud in state history. There was Sophie, standing at a press conference, surrounded by FBI agents, younger, maybe, but with that same determined fire in her eyes. The article described Harrison Black as the ringleader of a multi-state scam involving fake contractors, shell companies, and millions siphoned from affordable housing projects. And Sophie? She was the one who'd taken the entire thing down. She built the case over 3 years. She wasn't just a regulator. She was the enforcer of the hammer that came down when corrupt HOAs overstepped. And I'd left her in the dark, tried to fight this battle on my own like some delusional cowboy. If only I'd called her on day one. But there was no use regretting what couldn't be changed. The war had come to us, and I'd shown up armed with hope against a well-oiled machine. Then, as I was snapping a photo of the mystery car's license plate, my phone buzzed again. "Don't photograph, we're protecting you." ASM. Was the car outside friendly, hostile? Was it Sophie, or someone pretending? The mystery was eating at me. Later, rummaging through Sophie's old work files in a restless 3 a.m. haze, I found another bombshell, a Washington Post front page from 5 years ago. Federal investigator saves veteran housing from HOA scheme. There she was, my wife, standing shoulder to shoulder with over 200 veterans who almost lost their homes. They were calling her a hero, the HOA destroyer. She'd taken down 17 corrupt HOAs in just 5 years. And I told her I could handle Rebecca Thompson. God, what was I thinking? The article even quoted Harrison Black, recalling how he threatened Sophie in court, said he'd ruin everything she loved once he got out. The judge had tacked on another year for that threat, but clearly, time hadn't softened his grudge. I was so caught up reading that I nearly missed the car doors slamming shut outside. Multiple. I grabbed the Batagana and peered through the blinds. 2 black SUVs had boxed in the sedan. My heart pounded. Was this Rebecca escalating? And then I saw her. Sophie. She stepped out of the front SUV like a general surveying a battlefield. Even under the streetlights, I could tell, this wasn't the woman who'd kissed me goodbye 2 weeks ago. She'd returned changed, sharper, more dangerous. She marched to the surveillance car and knocked on the window. "Gentlemen," I heard her say, voice cool and commanding, "you can leave now, a broken bar, or you can explain to the FBI why you're tailing a federal witness." The car peeled away so fast it left skid marks on the pavement. Sophie turned to the house and spotted me in the window. She smiled that same smile I'd fallen for a decade ago, but her eyes were all business. Cold, focused. "Hey, honey," she called, as casually as if she'd just come back from the grocery store. "Sorry I'm late." Traffic was brutal. "Murder," she said casually, as if she hadn't just scared 2 full-grown men into driving off like their lives depended on it. Like this was all just part of a normal Tuesday. I opened the front door, and she walked in, followed closely by 4 strangers. "Daniel, meet the team," she said without missing a beat. "James is our forensic accountant. Maria handles legal strategy. Tommy's in charge of cybersecurity. And Andrea Brokenbar." She paused, giving him a look. "Andre specializes in uncovering things people go to great lengths to keep buried." Within minutes, they turned our kitchen into what looked like a tactical war room. Laptops opened, phones buzzed, printers churned out pages. Sophie casually poured herself a cup of coffee. When had she even made coffee? And turned to me. 48 hours. That's what I promised. We've got work to do. Sophie started, but she raised a hand. "I know, you've got questions. You're overwhelmed, probably even a little afraid of me right now, but I need your trust to just for a little longer. Can you give me that?" I nodded. What else could I do? This woman, the same one I'd shared a life with for 10 years, now felt like someone I barely knew, but she was my best shot at saving the ranch. "First priority the email hack," she said. "Harrison got into your school account and sent a fake resignation. We're reversing it." Tommy was already typing like a man possessed. "Got it. Email's been pulled. Principal alerted to the breach." And wait a second. He turned his laptop toward Sophie. Harrison's been busy. 3 other HOAs, exact same tactics. Violation blitz, property damage, forced sales to dummy companies. Maria, flipping through a thick file, looked up. Rebecca and Harrison are connected to let me double-check 3 shell companies. They've been snapping up land around here for a couple of years, nothing big enough to raise flags. But combine in a broken bar. She tapped her tablet, and a satellite map appeared. They now control nearly 80% of the surrounding area. Your ranch is the missing puzzle piece. With that last piece, Maria explained, they could sell everything to international developers. She typed a few lines. Estimated deal value, $50 million. 50 million. No wonder Rebecca had been carrying this grudge for decades. This wasn't just revengeia, it was business. Huge, dangerous business. There's more, Andre said, and something in his voice made everyone pause. 2 other HOAs, same blueprint, but those homeowners didn't fight it, they sold. And every transaction, the money funneled to one offshore account. He pulled up a document, and that account is tied to a development company flagged by the FBI for a broken bar. He hesitated, looking at Sophie. For what? I asked. International money laundering, Sophie replied with a heavy sigh. The Bureau's been tracking this for 2 years. What started as a neighborhood dispute, it's officially become a federal case. So call the FBI, I said. Get them involved right now. But Sophie shook her head. We need hard evidence directly linking Rebecca and Harrison to the broader conspiracy. Right now, what we've got wouldn't hold up in court. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I hesitated, but Sophie nodded for me to take it. Mr. Matthews? The voice was jittery, frightened. This is Kevin Thompson, Rebecca's husband. Yeah, I need to talk. Alone. It's about your wife. There's something you should know, a broken bar, something important. Don't tell her. Please, my life could depend on it. Then the line went dead. A second later, a text came in. Tomorrow noon, the old Miller barn. Come alone, yeah, or you'll never know the truth about why Sophie really married you. The room faded around me. Why she married me. What was that supposed to mean? I looked over at Sophie. She was mid-conversation with James, discussing the paper trail of shell companies. She glanced up, saw me watching her, and smiled at that same warm, familiar smile from our wedding day. But Kevin's words echoed in my skull. Everyone else noticed my reaction. The room quieted. Sophie's expression stayed calm, but something flickered behind her eyes. Let me guess, she said softly. Kevin wants to meet. Says he knows something about me. I nodded, still stunned. How could she possibly know? It's a setup, Andre said quickly. Classic distraction. You show up, they ambush you. But Sophie was already considering alternatives, her mind calculating scenarios. Maybe, or maybe Kevin's finally grown a conscience. James, dig into Kevin Thompson. Everything. Bank accounts, work history, a broken bar if you can. Medical records too. Sophie, I said slowly, what could he possibly know about you? Her face hardened. 5 years ago, Harrison had an inside source, someone feeding him intel during the investigation. We never caught the mole. She locked eyes with me. Whoever it was, a broken bar, they knew things, personal things, things that could ruin everything I've worked for. The room went silent. Even the buzzing text seemed to stop. What kind of things? I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. Her smile was tinged with sorrow, the kind that would make you question if you ever really knew me. She turned away, but I saw her hands shake ever so slightly. In a decade of marriage, I'd only seen her truly shaken twice. Once when her mother died, a broken bar, and now. Whatever Kevin says, she warned, remember who we're up against. Harrison plays the long game. He'll twist anything to rip us apart. That's how he wins. He finds the thing you love most and turns it into your weakness. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Kevin. I know your wife's secret. Come alone. Don't tell her. Why did Kevin know anything about Sophie? And what kind of secret could be worth risking his life? Would you go if you were me? 2 days later, the Oakwood Estates Community Center was packed to the walls. Over 100 residents had turned out. Rebecca had pulled every string, bringing in professional sound and video crews, giant screens, high-end microphones. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a performance. I sat in the front row, Sophie next to me, both of us dressed sharp, faces unreadable. The rest of her team was scattered among the crowd, blending in as concerned neighbors. Then Rebecca took the stage like royalty entering her court. Power suit, perfect posture, and a megawatt smile that could light up a city block. "Friends, neighbors, fellow homeowners," a broken bar she began, her voice smooth as polished glass. Her voice oozed with fake sincerity. "We're gathered here today to address a threat to our community, a kind of cancer that's putting everything we've built at risk." She clicked a remote, and suddenly, my face filled the giant screen behind her. It was a terrible photo, probably yanked from my driver's license, enlarged to make me look like a criminal. "Daniel Matthews," she continued, "inherited a piece of property that's become a nuisance. It's unsafe, unsightly, and it's draining the financial value of our neighborhood." She paused for effect. "Thanks to him, we've lost credibility with major developers who had big plans to turn Oakwood Estates into the kind of resort-style community we all deserve." A low murmur spread through the audience. People nodded. They'd been promised skyrocketing property values, a tripling, even if only one stubborn rancher would just disappear. "But today," she said, building to her dramatic conclusion, "we put an end to that. Mr. Matthews has 30 days to leave, or we'll invoke the clause his grandfather agreed to long ago." Then, with smug finality, "The future of Oakwood Estates begins now." Applause thundered through the hall. Next to me, I felt Sophie's shoulders go rigid. But she stayed still. "We had a plan. Let Rebecca feel victorious. Let her drop her guard. Then we'd move." I stood slowly, every eye on me. "May I asked, gesturing toward the microphone. Rebecca's smile faltered. She hadn't expected me to speak, at least not publicly. But she quickly recovered, stepping aside with exaggerated grace. "Of course, everyone has the right to speak, even if it won't change anything." I hooked up my laptop to their Avenue system. Tommy had guaranteed it would work, and clicked play on the first video. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Thompson," I said calmly. "Everyone deserves to be heard. So let's start with what you had to say." 3 nights ago, 2:37 a.m., infrared footage filled the screen. Rebecca directing the sabotage, Kevin sawing through pipes, Harrison pouring chemicals. Dead silence. "Fake," Harrison shouted from the back. "We've already proven that's been doctored." I couldn't help but smile. "We were ready for this." "You're right, Mr. Black. That footage could be altered." "But what about this?" I clicked again. Another video played, a clear as day from a different perspective. Andre had tracked down a neighbor's doorbell camera. Then another angle, this time from a traffic cam Tommy had accessed. All of them showed the same thing. Rebecca Thompson, coordinating the destruction of my family's land. "Still think it's fake?" I asked. The crowd started to shift in uneasy, murmuring. Some stood, demanding explanations. Rebecca lunged for the mic. "This is entrapment," she snapped. "None of this is even admissible." "You're right," said a new voice from the back. "Sophie." She walked forward with slow, deliberate steps that silenced the room like a cold front. "Video evidence has its limitations," she said. "So let's focus on something even more solid. Like, say, 3 shell corporations you and Mr. Black set up: Sunshine Holdings, Meadow Development, and Paradise Ventures." "Familiar names?" Rebecca went pale. Harrison bolted toward the exit, but Andre calmly stepped in his way. He didn't threaten, he simply blocked. "I don't know what you're talking about," Rebecca muttered. But Sophie was already pulling up documents on the projector. "Really? Because your signature appears on every one of these incorporation files alongside bank statements showing $8.5 million in HOA funds funneled into those companies in the last 2 years. Chaos erupted. Shouts filled the room. "Where's our assessment money?" someone yelled. "Wasn't that special levy for the pool repairs?" another cried. Sophie raised a hand, and the room fell quiet. "My name is Sophie Matthews," she said. Her voice was clear, commanding. She didn't need a mic. "I'm the Federal Director of HOA Oversight and Restructuring." She turned to Rebecca and Harrison. "And you two are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering." The double doors burst open. FBI agents swept in, moving quickly, efficiently. Harrison tried to run, but didn't get far. He hit the floor before he reached the aisle. Rebecca stood frozen, mouth moving, but no words came out. And then Kevin stood up. "Quiet." "Beaten down, Kevin," Rebecca's shadow for 2 decades. Kevin, sit down, Rebecca screeched, her face turning purple. But Kevin didn't sit, hands trembling. He pulled out his phone. I recorded everything, he said, louder now, steadier. 2 years worth, every conversation, every plan. He pressed play. Rebecca's voice filled the room. I don't care if those strawberries are organic gold. Burn them. Make it look like some crop disease. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He played another clip. Harrison's voice this time. 50 million if we get that ranch. Do whatever it takes. Rebecca snapped. Kevin, stop, you miserably. But the FBI was already reading her rights. Her angry screams were drowned out by the click of handcuffs. Sophie turned back to the crowd. Her voice was calm, steady, final. 3 HOAs across this state have been manipulated, defrauded, and exploited. But today we took the first step toward justice. Over 200 families have been systematically defrauded, Sophie said, addressing the crowd. Every dollar will be returned within 60 days. If you've been unfairly fined or charged by this HOA in the past 5 years, we'll be launching full audits. Justice might have taken its time, but it's here now. I watched through the window as they loaded Harrison into the back of a federal van. He caught my eye, smiling, smug. His lips moved slowly, deliberately. Phase 2. Then, unbelievably, he winked. The van door slammed shut, but through the rear window, I could still see him laughing. It wasn't the laugh of a man defeated, it was the laugh of someone who knew something we didn't. What the hell is Phase 2? Sophie saw it, too. Her eyes narrowed, but before we could process it, the van disappeared down the road. The meeting devolved into chaos, residents crowding Sophie with questions, tears, outrage, relief. Through it all, she stayed composed, taking names, promising follow-ups, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept drifting toward the door. What had we missed? It wasn't until later, sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by files and empty coffee mugs, that Sophie finally said what we were both thinking. He's planning something, she muttered, staring at the paperwork. Harrison always has a contingency, always. So what do we do? I asked. She looked up. For the first time since this all started, there was fear in her eyes. We wait, we watch, because whatever Phase 2 it's not over, and it's going to be bad. She was right, but neither of us could have imagined just how bad or how personal it would get. Harrison Black had one last card to play, one final move meant to shatter everything we'd fought for. But that's another story. For now, we had a victory to celebrate. Rebecca Thompson was in custody. The HOA was officially dissolved, and for the first time in a long while, the ranch was safe. Or so we thought. What we didn't see at the time was the security footage. In it, Harrison sat calmly in the back of the police car, still smiling. He mouthed the same 2 words again. Phase 2. 6 months later I stood in the fields, watching rows of new strawberry plants push through the soil. They weren't the heirloom varieties my grandfather once tended. Those had died with Rebecca's sabotage, but these were still ours. Sophie and I had planted them by hand, with help from veterans she'd worked with on past cases. The irrigation system gleamed a brand new, high-tech, and funded by the settlement. Turns out conspiring to destroy agricultural infrastructure as part of a federal fraud scheme carries weight. Who would have guessed? From the greenhouse, the morning news crackled over the radio. Rebecca Thompson sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Harrison Black, 27 years for conspiracy and probation violation. Kevin Thompson receives a reduced sentence of 3 years for cooperating with authorities. His secret recordings were vital in exposing what prosecutors now call the largest HOA fraud ring in U.S. history. I turned off the radio. I'd heard enough of them for one lifetime. That's when I saw Kevin in the driveway. He was holding a cardboard box of strawberry plants. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he said, eyes down. But I want to help rebuild what she destroyed or what I helped destroy. These plants are heritage, sourced from the Ag College. They're descended from your grandfather's original strains. I stared at him, this man who had spent 2 decades under Rebecca's shadow, who finally found his spine when it counted most. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said, taking the box from his hands. Grab some gloves, we've got work to do. Turns out, Harrison's Phase 2 wasn't some masterstroke of revenge. It was an escape plan, and he had allies ready to break him out during transport. What he mouthed in that van wasn't a threat, it was a signal. But Kevin's recordings included every detail. The FBI was ready. Harrison's brilliant Phase 2, it earned him 10 more years and took down his entire network. As for Rebecca, she tried everything, claimed entrapment, accused Sophie of framing her, even tried to say I seduced Kevin to get him to turn. But when you steal $8.5 million and document every penny of it, there's not much wiggle room in court. Last I heard, she was assigned to the prison garden. Word is, she kills every plant she touches. Sophie and I converted the old HOA office into something new, the Matthews Legal Aid Center. We've helped more than 200 families claw back stolen funds. Sophie now trains young lawyers to spot and stop HOA corruption before it starts. There's a sign out front, protecting homeowners from predatory associations. But my favorite part is smaller. A plaque by the door, in memory of William Matthews, a man who never backed down. Dad would have loved that. Sophie stepped up beside me as I surveyed the field. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. "Just thinking about Phase 2, I said. Harrison was still so confident at the end. She chuckled. "Confidence doesn't equal competence. I had to learn that, too, when I tried to handle Rebecca alone." She squeezed my hand. "You learned. That's what matters." Looking back now, I sometimes wonder, what if I'd called Sophie sooner? Could we have stopped them earlier? Could I have saved those strawberries? But then I hear my dad's voice again. It's not about dodging every storm, it's about learning to dance in the rain. We danced, all right, through lawsuits, threats, betrayals, and we came out stronger. The ranch was still standing, the crooks were behind bars. And my wife, turns out she was a full-blown superhero. Not bad for a guy who used to think history teachers had quiet lives. Sophie nudged me, pointing toward the road. A car had just pulled up. A young couple got out, nervous, holding paperwork. "Bet you they're here with HOA trouble," she said. I smiled. "Bet you're right." We walked toward them together, because that's what we do now. We fight back, we protect families, and we're damn good at it. Rebecca tried to steal my family's legacy. Instead, she gave us something new, purpose. Funny how that works. Like the universe has a wicked sense of humor. Or maybe it just loves a good comeback. Either way, here's what I've learned. Sometimes, when you think you've lost everything, a broken bar, you're actually just getting started. And if you ever find yourself facing a corrupt HOA, well, now you know who to call. Just double check if your spouse is secretly a superhero first. "That's him, officer, the trespasser," shrieked the HOA president as I pulled up to my family ranch. After 3 years away, that's the reception I got. This woman, this Karina, actually called the police on me for stepping foot onto the land my family has owned for 6 decades. I couldn't help but laugh, not out of humor, but disbelief. She had no clue what she had just set into motion. All it took was one phone call that night, one call to my wife, and within 2 days, that smug HOA president would lose everything, her authority, her cash flow, and eventually her freedom. What unfolded next? Easily the wildest HOA revenge tale you'll ever hear. Welcome to Echo Stories. Let me take you back to the beginning. The first day I returned to the ranch was nothing like I'd imagined. I had been teaching history in the city, sending money back home to help with Dad's medical bills. When he passed and left me the ranch, I thought I'd finally be returning to peace and solitude. Instead, I was met by 3 people at the gate like they were guarding Fort Knox. In the center stood Rebecca Thompson, with 2 board members flanking her, both clearly wishing they were anywhere else. She clutched a clipboard, of course, her face twisted into a smug grin that made my stomach churn. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping it polite, for now. That's when she dropped it on me. "This property is now under the Oakwood Estates HOA. I'll need proper ID and a statement of your business here." "My own property?" I almost burst out laughing. Instead, I handed over my father's will, the deed to everything. 10 minutes later, Sheriff Gonzalez showed up, and I saw recognition in his eyes. "Danny Matthews," he said warmly, using the nickname I hadn't heard in years. "Sorry about your dad." Then he turned to Rebecca, and his tone flipped. "Ma'am, This man is the rightful owner of this land. It's not part of your HOA. That should have been the end of it. But then Rebecca muttered something low, something that made my skin crawl. Just like his father, thinks the rules don't apply to him. We'll see about that. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to that line, because this had nothing to do with homeowner regulations. Later that evening, I passed the HOA office. The lights were still on. I glanced inside and spotted Rebecca in front of a large whiteboard. Even from the street, I could read the title, Future Resort Development. It had artist renderings of luxury condos, a golf course, the whole package. I watched her trace a finger along the map and stop right where my ranch sat. She tapped it once, twice, 3 times, like locking in a target. That night, I texted Sophie. She was in DC for some major meeting. Her job kept her traveling a lot, as something to do with housing policy and community infrastructure, though I never really followed the details. Local HOAs giving me a hard time, I wrote, but I've got it under control. Her reply came fast. You sure? What's the HOA called? I texted back, Oakwood Estates. Then a broken bar silence, a long pause. Finally, be careful, Dan. Call me if it escalates. But of course, I didn't. Why would I? I was a grown man dealing with a nosy neighborhood official. How bad could it really be? That night, while rummaging through Dad's old paperwork, I stumbled onto something unexpected, a legal file from 2 decades back. Rebecca Thompson had once filed a lawsuit against my father, trying to claim 2 acres of our land due to a supposed surveying mistake. She lost. Not only that, the judge made her pay his legal fees. Now it all made sense. This wasn't about enforcing HOA bylaws. This was personal, cold, festering revenge that had been simmering for 20 years. That wasn't the only strange thing that night. At exactly 11 p.m., Sophie's phone on the nightstand started buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times. I glanced at her and she silenced the calls, each from an unknown number. Who's calling this late? I asked. She didn't look up. Work stuff. People don't respect time zones. Before she turned it over, I caught a glimpse of the screen. No name, as a just unknown caller every time. Nothing important, she said. But now, looking back, I wonder, were those calls warnings or threats? Digging further into Dad's files, I uncovered years of tension with the HOA. Turns out Oakwood Estates had been trying to stretch their territory for ages. Our ranch, the jewel they couldn't get their hands on. They'd sent offers, threats, even lobbied for rezoning, but Dad had stood his ground. Now it was my turn to fight, and I was ready. I grabbed a notebook and started documenting everything. Rebecca's veiled threat, the police encounter, the old lawsuit. If she wanted a battle, I'd give her one, but I'd do it smart and methodical, just like Dad always taught me. Kill them with kindness, he used to say, and then bury them in paperwork. Something else felt off, though. When I tried looking up Oakwood Estates HOA online, the site kept crashing, specifically the page listing board members. Almost like someone didn't want me finding out who was behind it. I mentioned it to Sophie during our goodnight call. She let out a strange chuckle. Tech glitches, she said casually, especially when you're searching for the wrong people. I didn't get it then, but I would. Oh, I definitely would. That night, I fell asleep thinking I was ready for whatever this HOA could throw my way. I had the documents, the law, the stubborn grit of the Matthews family. What I didn't realize, I'd just walked onto a chessboard where my opponent had been planning every move for decades, and I had no clue my wife was about to flip the entire game. Meanwhile, across town, Rebecca Thompson typed Sophie Matthews into her computer. The screen blinked, froze, then shut off completely. Why would a simple name crash her system? What do you think happened? Drop your theories in the comments. The next 3 days felt like I'd been hit by an avalanche of paperwork. No exaggeration, Rebecca bombarded me with 15 different violation notices in just 72 hours. One claimed the grass was an inch too tall. Another said the fence wasn't the approved shade of brown. And my personal favorite, that my truck was parked aggressively. I actually laughed out loud at that one. What does that even mean? A parking with attitude? But the penalties? Those were no joke. Altogether, She slapped me with $7,500 in fines over lawn height and paint color. I remembered a handbook Sophie had given me years ago, something her parents used when their HOA tried similar nonsense. Just in case, she'd said. Well, the case had definitely arrived. I spent hours drafting the response, citing what I thought were the right sections. Section 7.3, if I recalled correctly, gave homeowners 30 days to fix any infractions. I went all in illegal terminology, proper formatting, the whole deal. I was proud of that letter, even threw in some whereas and heretofore. Dad would have called it overkill, but I felt prepared. Unfortunately, that was my first real misstep. Turns out I was referencing the old 2005 HOA bylaws. Oakwood Estates had updated their policies in 2020, and Section 7.3 had been replaced. The new clause, 11.1a, which gave homeowners just 72 hours to fix violations. Rebecca's reply hit my inbox within hours, and I could practically hear her smug tone oozing from the screen. Mr. Matthews, your clear misunderstanding of current HOA regulations has resulted in an additional $500 fine for submitting improper documentation. I suggest you educate yourself before attempting legal arguments. That stung, but it was nothing compared to what came next. As I was untangling that mess, I kept digging into Dad's paperwork. That's when I found what I thought would be my silver bullet. The original lawsuit between Rebecca and my father wasn't just about a boundary line. She had attempted to buy the property years ago, planning to flip the land to developers for a resort project. She'd made promises to an investment group that she could deliver the entire area. When Dad refused to sell, she tried to exploit a surveying discrepancy to claim part of the ranch. The judge not only ruled against her, he condemned her actions as predatory and malicious. The fallout: she lost her real estate license for 6 months and was ordered to pay $30,000 in legal costs. No wonder she despised us. But here's the twist: buried among Dad's documents was a recent promotional flyer, future resort development. It read, featuring glossy images of upscale condos, a broken bar built right where our ranch currently stood. The project was slated for next year. This wasn't ancient history. Rebecca was still trying to take our land. That night, I called Sophie, fired up by the discovery. You won't believe this, I said. Rebecca tried to take our land 20 years ago, and she's still at it. There was a pause. What do you mean tried to take it? She asked. I explained everything of the lawsuit, the failed buyout, the resort plans. While I spoke, I heard her phone buzz. She muttered sorry, and declined the call. Then it rang again, a broken bar, and again, 3 times in under a minute. Sophie, what's going on? I asked. Nothing, she said, but her voice had changed. Tighter, sharper. People found out I've been looking into Oakwood Estates, she admitted. Word travels fast in my industry. She declined the third call with more force than necessary, and then her tone shifted into that laser-focused mode she slipped into whenever something serious was brewing. Daniel, listen to me. Anyone who holds a grudge for 20 years and is still chasing the same goal, that's not just persistent. That's dangerous. Please, he broken bar, be careful. But I wasn't thinking about danger. I had evidence. I had proof of her intentions. What I didn't realize was just how far she was already willing to go. The next morning, my phone woke me up. It was my principal. Daniel, I hate to do this over the phone, he said, but we've received a formal complaint alleging threatening behavior toward a neighbor. Until this is resolved, we'll have to suspend your evening and weekend tutoring sessions. My stomach dropped. That tutoring made up almost 40% of my income, around $2,000 a month. Money I needed to cover the mortgage Dad had taken out for his treatments. This is crazy, I protested. I haven't threatened anyone. But it didn't matter. The complaint came from an official HOA channel, complete with a logo and letterhead. Rebecca had made one call, and just like that, half my income vanished. But it didn't stop there. An hour later, I got another notification, an email sent from my own account to the school board. It read, effective immediately, I am resigning from all teaching positions to focus on personal matters. I hadn't written it. Hand shaking, I checked my sent folder. There it was, sent at 3:47 a.m. While I was dead asleep, someone had hacked into my email. Someone who wanted me not just financially strained but unemployed. I didn't feel rage, not the fiery kind, Anyway, what I felt was cold, focused fury. This woman was systematically trying to ruin me. Even as I reeled from the news, Sophie's phone lit up again. 3 more calls, all while I was on the line with my principal, all from numbers I didn't recognize. All declined without hesitation. When she came back into the room, I asked, "More work stuff?" She looked at her phone like it was a venomous snake. "Something like that," she replied. Then she added, "Did you know Rebecca Thompson used to work for a law firm?" The topic shift was abrupt. It should have raised a red flag. But I was so overwhelmed, I missed it entirely. That evening, the first domino fell. A letter arrived from the bank. Because of my reduced, unverifiable income, they were re-evaluating the terms of the agricultural loan. I had 60 days or 2 months to prove financial stability. Otherwise, I could face foreclosure. 60 days to save the land that had been in my family for 60 years. I sat at my father's old desk, my head in my hands, doing everything I could not to spiral. That's when Sophie's old HOA handbook slid off the shelf and landed on the floor. It fell open to a page I hadn't noticed before, a section on HOA abuse of power and legal recourse, and in the margin, underlined in bold ink, was a note written in Sophie's handwriting, a broken bar in the margin beside the highlighted section in Sophie's handbook. 3 words were scrawled in her unmistakable handwriting: nuclear option A only if all else fails. Beneath it, a phone number with a DC area code. I didn't dial it. Not yet. I still believed I could handle everything on my own. Pride really is a dangerous thing, and mine was about to get me leveled. But here's the strange part. At almost the exact moment I got the letter about my account being frozen, Rebecca's bank account was frozen too. She hadn't even been served any papers, and Sophie hadn't returned home. So broken bar, who was pulling the strings? Echo stories familiar. Who do you think is behind the scenes? Drop your theories in the comments. Have you ever had that moment when you realize you're not dealing with someone normal? That dawning clarity when you understand your opponent doesn't play by any of the rules you know? For me, that moment came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke to a horrible, mechanical screech like someone choking a cat made of metal. I grabbed my dad's old baseball bat and crept outside, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The noise was coming from the pump house. Our irrigation system, a $50,000 worth of high-tech equipment Dad had installed just 2 years ago, was shrieking like it was dying. I flipped on the lights and froze. Someone had attacked the system like a surgeon wielding a chainsaw. The main pipes weren't just cute, they'd been deliberately shredded for maximum destruction. Inside the pump housing, there was some kind of expanding foam, solid and choking the mechanics. The electrical panel was smashed beyond recognition. It looked like someone had gone at it with a sledgehammer. But the true devastation didn't reveal itself until dawn. 5 acres of strawberry as our flagship crop were ruined. 2 weeks away from harvest, and every single plant was brown, curled in on itself, shriveled. The chemical stench hit me first, sharp and caustic, burning my throat. Someone had poisoned the water, then they destroyed the system that carried it. That's $120,000 in produce gone. Add in the destroyed irrigation system, the lost contracts we were counting, on a broken bar. It was incalculable. I collapsed to my knees right there in the middle of the field where 3 generations of blood, sweat, and pride had once grown. I won't lie, I cried, because those weren't just crops. That was my grandfather's dream, my father's legacy, my future. All of it, taken down by someone clinging to a decades-old grudge. I called the sheriff, but what did I really have? The security camera had been spray-painted black. No prints of whoever did this wore gloves. Could be vandalism, Deputy Morrison offered. But his eyes didn't believe what his mouth was saying. We've had some issues with teens from the city lately. Right. Teenagers with knowledge of crop irrigation systems and access to commercial herbicides. I was so furious I almost marched straight to Frank Henderson's place, our neighbor to the east. He and Dad had butted heads over water rights more than once. And lately, he'd been acting strange. I actually drove over to confront him, half crazed. Thank God his wife came out first and stopped me. Frank was in the hospital, she explained. Pneumonia. Had been there for 3 days. If she hadn't stepped in, I would have picked the wrong fight. Made everything worse, But the call that finally broke me came at 8 a.m. sharp. "Mr. Matthews, this is Tom from Valley Produce Distribution. I'm sorry to inform you that we've received a report from your local HOA regarding sanitation concerns at your facility. We'll need to terminate our contract for this season." Just like that, another $80,000 gone. I nearly screamed. "What sanitation issues? We've never had a single violation." Tom muttered something about not wanting to be involved in local conflicts and hung up. That was it. No recourse. No explanation. I stood there in the field, clutching my phone. Finally understanding the truth. This wasn't nuisance. This wasn't pettiness. It was deliberate, calculated economic sabotage. Rebecca wasn't trying to annoy me into leaving. She was trying to bankrupt me. That's when I called Sophie. Actually called her, not just a text. When she answered, my voice cracked. "Sophie, broken bar, I'm going to lose the ranch. It's all gone. The strawberries, the equipment, everything." There was silence on her end. "How much damage?" she asked. $120,000 in destroyed crops, $50,000 in equipment, $80,000 in canceled contracts. "And I have 30 days before the bank starts foreclosure." A long pause. Then Sophie's voice returned a different now. Cold, efficient, focused. "Do you have any footage?" The main camera was taken out. But to broken bar, I remembered something. There was still Dad's old game camera. He'd mounted it years ago under the barn eaves to catch raccoons getting into the feed. It faced the pump house. It might have caught something. My hands shook as I pulled the memory card and plugged it in. The footage was grainy, night vision style, but clear enough. 2:37 a.m. Rebecca Thompson stood in the frame, commanding the destruction like a general giving orders. Her husband, Kevin, hesitated before each act of sabotage, looking to her for confirmation. And then there was a third persona, a man I didn't recognize. He wore gloves and professional-grade coveralls, moving with sharp, practiced precision. I zoomed in, hoping to ID him. His gloves had something stitched on the cuffs, letters. In the ghostly gray of the infrared image, I could just make out two initials, SM. My chest tightened. SM. Sophie Matthews? Number. That couldn't be. That was impossible. Why would she? I shook the thought away, refusing to believe it. Had to be a coincidence. But my hands trembled as I captured a screenshot of the man in those gloves. He was the one handling the chemicals. He knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't amateur hour. I sent the video to Sophie immediately. Her reply came within seconds. "Send me a close-up, now." Her urgency sent a chill down my spine. I forwarded the image. A pause. Then her typing bubble appeared, a broken bar, and disappeared, then reappeared. It happened 3 times before she finally sent a response. "Those aren't my gloves," she wrote, like she had read my thoughts from 1,000 miles away. "Those aren't my gloves," Sophie said, answering the question I hadn't even asked aloud, even from 1,000 miles away. "But I think I know who they belong to." Her voice was tight, urgent. "Daniel, listen closely. Don't confront Rebecca. Don't talk to the police. Don't do anything for 48 hours. Sophie, I can't just, please, just trust me. Have I ever failed you?" And she hadn't. Not in a decade of marriage. Sophie had always been the calm in my storm. But as I stood in that ruined field, the dream of 3 generations decaying around me, trust felt like a luxury I could barely afford. "All right," I said, my voice low. 48 hours. Then what? Then you'll understand exactly why Rebecca Thompson messed with the wrong family. The rest of that day, I focused on collecting proof. I documented every inch of damage, every wilted plant, every sliced pipe, each shattered component. I tallied the financial toll down to the last dollar. $120,000 in immediate crop loss, $50,000 in equipment, $80,000 in canceled contracts, and $20,000 in lost market sales. Altogether, nearly $300,000 obliterated in a single night, not even counting the emotional cost of watching my father's legacy rot before my eyes. By sundown, I had filled 3 notebooks and taken over 500 photographs. If Sophie was preparing for war, I'd make sure she had the ammunition. But none of that changed what was lost. That night, I found myself back in Dad's old workshop. The scent of sawdust still clung to the walls, like time hadn't moved since he passed. I stood quietly, surrounded by his tools, a tangible memories of a man who built things with his hands and his heart. I picked up his old hammer, the handle smoothed by years of use, and stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to return the favor, not to hurt anyone, but maybe to destroy their irrigation system. An eye for an eye. But then, I could almost hear Dad's voice in my head. Son, the difference between us and them? We build, they destroy. I put the hammer down. If Sophie needed 48 hours, she'd get it, but whatever she was planning, it had better deliver, because revenge was starting to look like the only justice left. Later, I zoomed in again on the footage of the third man. The camera had caught his face, not clearly, but enough. And those gloves, embroidered with the initials, SM, same as Sophie's. Coincidence, or something more? What do you think SM stands for? Drop your guesses in the comments. The emergency home meeting took place in the town's former barn, now a repurposed community center dressed in faux sophistication. About 50 residents squeezed into metal chairs. As I entered, I felt the weight of their stares. Some pitied me, some were just curious, but most looked exhausted, beaten down by years of Rebecca's tyranny. I set up my laptop at the front of the room. My hands were calm, even as fury churned beneath my skin. Before Mrs. Thompson speaks, I announced, not waiting for approval, there's something you all need to see. The projector buzzed to life, casting the grainy infrared footage onto the wall. There she was, Rebecca Thompson, overseeing the sabotage like a general issuing orders. Kevin carried out the destruction, glancing toward her before every swing. And the third man, now the one in coveralls and SM gloves, moved with precision, handling chemicals like a professional. The room buzzed with hushed conversations. Finally, I thought, now they'll see who she really is. Rebecca? She didn't even blink. That same smug smile stayed locked on her face. When the footage ended, she stood and began clapping. A slow, sarcastic, impressive special effects. Mr. Matthews, she said smoothly. Did you whip this up yourself or hire a film crew? I especially loved how you inserted my husband into the scene, even though he was in bed with me all night. She turned to the room, all sweetness and venom. This is exactly the sort of behavior I warned you about. Mr. Matthews is unstable, dangerous. He's already harmed our community with his eyesore of a ranch. And now he's fabricating videos to defame decent people. Then he stood up, the man from the video, no gloves this time, but the same smug grin. Stepped forward. If I may, he said smoothly, I'm Harrison Black, technology consultant. I clenched my jaw. Mrs. Thompson asked me to review this footage, he continued, and I can state, with confidence, that it's been manipulated. The blurring, the conveniently obscured faces, these are classic signs of a deepfake. He flipped through a tablet, displaying charts and graphs that looked technical, but meant nothing to most. I've worked in cybersecurity for over 2 decades. This amateur hour. The crowd turned fast. Doubt clouded their faces. In 30 seconds, Harrison Black had dismantled the only evidence I had. But Rebecca wasn't finished. She stood again, this time holding a thick binder. While Mr. Matthews has been busy playing director, she said, I've been focused on protecting Oakwood Estates. She handed out copies of a document, each stamped with a formal seal. This is a covenant from 1983, signed by Daniel's grandfather, when Oakwood Estates was first founded. She paused for effect. It clearly states that if any property within the extended boundary zone negatively impacts the community's social or economic welfare, the HOA has the right to reclaim it. She looked directly at me. Your deteriorating ranch, combined with repeated code violations, fits that criteria perfectly. My throat tightened. This couldn't be legal. But then the lawyer she'd brought, of course she'd brought a lawyer, stood and confirmed it. The covenant is valid and enforceable. Mr. Matthews has 30 days to pay $200,000 in outstanding fines and fees. If he fails to do so, the HOA will assume ownership of the property. $200,000. They might as well have asked for the stars. I scanned the room, desperate for a single ally, just one person to speak up, but all I saw were lowered eyes. No one met my eyes. Even Bob Cooper, who'd griped about Rebecca for years, sat silently, avoiding my gaze. The meeting had been a total slaughter, and I was the only one left bleeding. My phone buzzed. It was Sophie. She'd been watching the whole thing through the live feed Jake always posted online. I answered, not caring who overheard. "Did you catch Harrison Black?" she said immediately. Her voice was sharp, frozen steel. 5 years ago, I caught that man skimming $2.3 million from a housing fund meant for veterans. Money stolen from people who served this country. I felt the blood drain from my face. Then why is he out? She cut in. Good behavior. Early release. She let out a humorless laugh. Daniel, that man vowed he'd ruin me when he got out. Looks like he found the perfect HOA through you. I stared at the phone. Sophie broken bar. Who are you? There was a pause. Then she said, the one person that man's terrified of, and I'm coming home. Outside the community center, Rebecca cornered me. She wasn't alone yet. 2 unfamiliar men flanked her. You've got 30 days, she said slowly, as if savoring every word. Unless you'd rather skip the drama and just sign the ranch over now. Do that, and I'll make sure you get enough to start over somewhere else. Maybe teaching is easier out of state. The threat was thinly veiled, but it was something else that caught my attention. She made a call, and I overheard just enough to feel my stomach twist. Yes, she's on her way. Start phase 3. Make sure everything's in place. Then she met my eyes and smirked. Your wife has quite the reputation, Mr. Matthews. Did you know that? Some folks even call her the HOA destroyer. But reputations only go so far when you're playing on my turf. I drove home like a ghost behind the wheel, trying to process what I'd just heard. Harrison Black, federal prison, $2.3 million, Sophie the HOA destroyer. It didn't make any sense, and yet every piece felt like it belonged to the same puzzle. When I pulled into the driveway, a dark sedan with tinted windows sat parked out front, engine running. I grabbed my trusty baseball bat again. Would I ever get to actually use it? But just before I could get close, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Don't photograph. We're protecting you. ASMSM. The same initials on the gloves from the video. Was Sophie involved? Or was someone using her name? That night, I prepared the ranch like I was expecting a siege. Moved anything valuable inside. Backed up every photo and document to multiple cloud accounts. I even set up Dad's old hunting cams around the property. If Rebecca wanted to keep escalating, I wasn't going to be caught off guard.